really very honored to be here with you tonight. I want to start by asking if anybody ever has watched the cartoon SpongeBob SquarePants. Did you ever see the episode where SpongeBob talks about having his best day ever, and he and Squidward are out doing some best day ever stuff? Well, I can easily recall 3 or 4 of my best days ever, and the first one would have been the night that I met my wife Suzanne. And I like to tell people we met when we were Christmas caroling for nursing home, but really we met in a bar in Ohio, on Lake Erie Island. And it was Suzanne. Suzanne will be here later this evening. She'll be here all weekend, but she and my son Zach are still flying in, so hopefully they'll walk in the door in a minute. But it was Suzanne's dazzling smile that drew me to her side that night, and after we started dating, I dubbed that her 1,000-watt smile. And I often think my life simply started over that night, the night I met her. Let's see if I can get a picture of her up here. Yeah, there's her while we were dating, and I'm not sure I had a mullet then, but...
You had a party in that.
Yeah, we had something going on, so we went into a joyous life, and you can see her 1,000-watt smile there. I think the next best day ever I had was Suzanne and I went through a grueling period of infertility and miscarriage, trying to start a family. It was a number of years, but my next best day ever happened in an orphanage in Kovrov, Russia, when they handed over our 7-month-old son, Zach. Zach was abandoned at birth and institutionalized, and we adopted him, and it was just a glorious way we started our family. And then, let's see, I think I got a couple pictures of that moment they handed Zach, the nurse in this Russian orphanage, handed him over to him. Suzanne was reaching her arms out. I remember my exact thoughts at that moment. My thoughts were, he's perfect, he's our prayers answered, and he is our son. And again, he's 17 years old now. I hope he walks through that door while we're all still here. So I'm looking forward to Suzanne and Zach showing up. So that was our first family portrait. Again, the 1,000-watt smile is beaming. And there's Suzanne and Zach in red square. So really, probably the very best day ever, though, was when our twins were born. Biologically, Jacob and Sammy were born a couple years later. And for some reason, I do not have baptism day pictures. But, that was maybe my best day ever. I mean, Suzanne and I had all of our dreams had come true. We had our 3 sons with us. We had successful careers. We were very much in love with each other, and we had everything we could have asked for. Sammy's on the left, Jacob's on the right. Jacob, if you would mind standing up a minute. This is Jacob now. He's 15 years old. But it was just a few days after that shining baptism day that I first heard the word histiocytosis. I couldn't pronounce it. I couldn't have repeated it that day, but I remember the feelings and the emotions I had when I heard it. I remember my worst fear was that the doctor was going to tell us that our son had leukemia. And strangely, I remember wishing later that's what he had told me. Suzanne's 1,000-watt smile vanished around that time. And I think I would have been aghast if I'd have known how long it would be till I saw it again. So our world, this was the last, this is our 3 sons, and then everything changed. Our world turned inside out with Sammy's diagnosis. Remember the fear I felt in the pit of my stomach and the utter helplessness to help our child. I think in time, Suzanne and I were able to gird ourselves for Sammy's fight, and we studied it, prepared it. We found the most awesome physician in the world. We knew where we were going to take him. We knew Cincinnati Children's Hospital was the place to go. But what I was not prepared for was how every single relationship in my life was altered at the time that Sammy was diagnosed. Nothing in the world seemed to matter to us anymore. It seemed like we lived in a tunnel. Just everything was focused on our child, and yet the world went on around us. People would still call us up, wanting to make social plans. And it's like, what were they thinking? I just said to myself. I know those emotions are shared by everyone in this room, except for one little difference. I only know those emotions from a dad's point of view. I can't, didn't, and don't know the power of a mother's emotion when our child is desperately ill. And I know it's maybe more powerful than what I felt. I talked about my relationships were altered. The one that was most altered was the one with my wife, Suzanne, at the time that our son was diagnosed. And it has never been the same since. And I want to remember that point because I want to come back to it. Our relationship has never been the same since. So I'd like to focus my comments tonight on marriage and relationship during times of trauma like this. You guys have all heard of PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. We often associate it with soldiers returning from war. Well, I use the phrase post-traumatic marital disorder or post-traumatic relationship disorder because it's just amazing how we had to figure out a new way to go about our marriage. And one of the symptoms of PTMD is that men deal with the emotions of a child's illness so differently from women. And I know you think, okay, you're right, men are different from women. I was really kind of proud of myself at the time of our marriage. I thought I was really understanding women, and I knew all that stuff about, listening and not trying to fix. And we went through a lot of stuff with the infertility, so I was wrong. I really had no idea how to deal with Suzanne's emotions, and nor did I really know how to give her what I thought she needed from me. I was kind of lost in my marriage, and my inability to protect my family. I mean, that's my job as a dad and a husband, is to protect my family. And I was helpless to do that. And Suzanne would get very frustrated because she didn't think I would cry ever. She never saw me cry, and she didn't think I was like, I don't know, she didn't know I was frightened and devastated. We just weren't connected. And I don't even think she knew I would have done anything in the world to just trade places with Sammy, to just jump up on that table and let him be healthy, because I had lived a long, good life already, and I would have traded, but I just didn't think she knew that. Another thing different about men and women, this is, and Jacob, I'm sorry, this might be a little personal, but I craved, as a man, I still craved intimacy, and I remember one time, I think it was, I was trying to romance, what do you call it, begging, and Suzanne said to me, that is the single farthest thing from my mind right now, and I think it was. So as Sammy progressed through the treatments, we kind of grew more and more distant, less connected. She couldn't believe that I still cared about how my Cleveland Indians were doing, or that I could get lost in a book for a couple hours. And I couldn't understand how she could just focus 100% solely on our Sam or at home with our other kids without taking any time for herself. And I would leave the room, leave the isolation room, and take breaks, but she never seemed to need that. And I just had a hard time understanding how we were so different. And also with 3 children and 1 sick child, I kind of felt like she really didn't have anything left for me. And I realized later there was a really good reason why I felt that, and that was because she didn't have anything left for me. And I'm not really sure I had anything left for her. It just controls your life when you go through this. Early on in Sam's fight, really the first few days he was diagnosed, we had kind of a miraculous thing happen to us. He was in Rainbow Babies and Children's Hospital, undiagnosed in the PICU. Suzanne and I were terrified out of our minds. The doctors told us he was critically ill with no idea what was wrong with him. You guys know the symptoms probably. And I was sleeping on the floor a couple of nights. I'm forgetting my pictures. For 2 nights we stayed there, not knowing at all what was wrong, just terrified. But the 3rd night I decided to go home and see Jacob and Zach. And Zach, a year old at the time, 2 years old, waited up for me. And I got home in time to put Zach on my shoulder and rock him to sleep. And for some reason, since we adopted Zach, Suzanne and I felt like Zach had angels around him. We just both had that feeling that he had angels around him, and it was really unexplainable. But So I asked that night as I was rocking him, you know, I missed that part about being a dad, but rocking my child on my shoulder. And I asked Zach, I said, Zach, do you have angels around you? And he said, yeah. And for some reason, I don't know why, I said, Zach, what are their names? And he writing, you know, with no pause, he said, their names are Chrissy and Kelly. And I said, oh, well, Zach, did you send your angels to see Sammy? He is really sick. We don't know what's wrong with him. We're very scared. Could you send your angels to help him? And Zach said, yeah, he would. And, you know, he drifted off to sleep on my shoulder. I contemplated our discussion for a long time until finally I went to sleep. Woke up the next morning just dreading going down to the hospital. I knew Suzanne was going to be in a very crabby, tired mood. But I got on the phone. That's not what I heard. What I heard was a very cheerful wife on the phone. She told me Sammy felt better, and she said that a nurse came in at 10 o'clock last night, and the nurse said to her, look, I'm going to take care of Sammy tonight. I want you to lay down in this lovely, sweet chair and get some sleep, and I'm not going to let any noise come into the room. I'm not going to let the pumps beep, and I'm going to take care of Sammy, and I want you to get some rest. And Suzanne said she slept like a dream that night and didn't hear the pumps or the commotion, and Sammy slept great, and he felt better. And so the next night I got Suzanne to go home, and I had the same experience. The nurse told me, I'm going to take care of you tonight. I'm going to take care of Sam. I want you to lay down in that chair and get a good night's sleep. And I did. I slept like a dream. The next morning I woke up, and the nurse was getting ready to leave. I looked at her name tag, and I said, Christine, thank you so much for a great night. That was awesome. Are you coming back tonight? She goes, no, I'm off again for a while. She walked out the door, and then she peeked her head back in and said, please call me Chrissy. So it was goosebumps. You know, we got Suzanne and I got goosebumps, and then we shared that information. There was moments after Zach promised to send his angels that it just let us know that we were not alone in that fight. But soon after that, the battle lines were drawn. We know that HLH is a civil war inside a child's body. The disease uses the child's own immune system or an adult, as I'm learning tonight when I meet some of you that have been through this. Immune system to attack from within. Our weapons are donated bone marrow, chemotherapy, brilliant medical staff, smart weapons that they use like ATG and other drugs, and of course hope, love, and prayer. I'm so delighted that I got to see Dr. Filipovich tonight. I've said many times to myself, I only wish I was as good at my job as Dr. Filipovich is at hers. She brings tremendous passion, awesome intellect, the heart of a lion, kindness, and a compassion that I want to share one of my bad days that in the hospital with Sammy was going through his a lot of chemotherapy, a lot of treatment before his bone marrow transplant, and Suzanne had the night shift. I took the day shift. She'd just gone to bed around the McDonald house, and I was with Sammy. It was a Sunday, and I had him in my arms, and I put him down in the crib, and to my horror, his central line was laying on the floor. I must have stepped on his line and pulled it out, and I was like feeling so horrible, awful. I was in a blind panic, and I called Suzanne, made her come back. You know, in my mind, he needed chemo, blood. He didn't have any way to get anything, and I ran out to the nurse's station and demanded they call Dr. Filipovich, and 2 minutes later, she was in my room. John, everything is fine. I've already called surgery. They got it covered. This happens now and again. It's okay. She put her hand on my arm and calmed me down, and it was just one of my moments that I was so grateful to have you there with us. And there were many others. But despite all of our optimism, prayers, hope, and medical power, Sammy entered into a long downward spiral. I keep forgetting this one was back in Rainbow, Babies and Children's first day of chemo, I think. And this is one of my favorite pictures of Sammy and Suzanne. Now we're here at Cincinnati Children's. So our lives for many months existed on that floor, the HEMONC BMT floor at Cincinnati Children's. At home with Jacob and Zach was Suzanne's mom. Grandma took care of them. She was their rock. If you have ever been even one day in a HEMONC unit, you know it is the worst place in the world. At the same time, we found it to be an amazing, awesome, unbelievable place. The patients and staff come from all socio-economic backgrounds, rich, poor, black, white, Asian, Arab, Native American. It was just a micro melting pot of America. It was a place without a hint of hate or racism or discrimination. I want to tell you about some of the amazing kids we encountered there. I know you all, this was Dr. Philippovich. You remember Jacob's there with his, sitting outside. But, there's a little girl on our floor named Tracy. She was 3 years old. I think she's from Tennessee. Her family was very poor, according to the grapevine. She had beautiful, bouncy blonde hair. One of those little girls that's pretty enough to be in those little southern pageants, and just gorgeous. And she would come by dragging her IV pole in the evenings, and she'd make little crafts for Sammy. She'd tape him up on his window and get him to smile, and she would just express of nothing she had. She expressed love. She expressed so much love to Sammy. Down the hall was a little Native American boy named Isaiah. He had a bone marrow transplant, was there a couple months before us, and I remember his parents they didn't speak much English, and the grapevine too said they were very poor. But here, in this place, Isaiah was one of the richest kids there was, because he had his mom, his dad, his grandma, and his grandpa who loved him, and they all spent time with him, and they were just straight off that Ronald McDonald house. And I got to know Miranda, his mom, a little bit in the elevator at Ronald McDonald House. We exchanged hugs, and a few words she spoke English. We would inquire about our children. And I remember the day Isaiah was going to go home. There was a big celebration on the floor. He was going home. And I remember that night he had a massive... Well, that night he was in the ICU, and then a few days later Miranda came to my room and asked me if I would like to join the vigil outside his room when they turned the machines off. There was so much love from this family. There's a little boy named Zach. He had HLH. Zach was 2 years old. His personality was magnetic. The staff called it the Z factor because Zach spread love and joy, even in the worst conditions. The chaplains were all drawn to Zach to be ministered by him. The rabbi and the Catholic priest and the Protestant minister all came to Zach because the way he spread joy and love. And just these three kids that affected me, and I learned something from all of them. And I learned that on this cancer unit, money and power don't mean anything. The currency is not dollars. The currency is love. And it was one of Sammy's ultimate missions to me was the love that I learned from that. And unfortunately, it was during little Zach's funeral that I heard the term extravagant love to describe the love on the cancer unit. And that's what it was. Extravagance means lavishness, over the top, or excessive, and that's what love is like in those places. And I know you've all felt it and witnessed it. Should the world ever embrace the love, diversity, acceptance, valor, and generosity that I've witnessed on the T5A, it was called where Sammy was, I think human potential would be unlimited. So those were some of the lessons that I learned from Sammy. This was as he was progressing in treatments. This picture Suzanne took as she pulled out of our driveway the day before Sammy was gone. Jacob and Zach waving goodbye. I'm going to skip this one very quickly. This was Sammy's last day. When he was gone, Suzanne and I were presented with another marital challenge, grief and the way women and men did it so differently. My theme song at the time was the old Platters hit, The Great Pretender, because I pretended in my outer self and even to myself, I pretended I was doing well. And again, Suzanne couldn't figure out when I didn't cry, when she cried, and we hadn't come together. And inside me, I began, a little cyst of anger started forming in me, anger that God could take this child from us. That didn't He know? Didn't God remember how hard it was for us to have children? He could take Sammy from us. And that anger grew in me for a number of years until it really drove us, our marriage, to the edge of a cliff. Suzanne just came, we just had a horrible fight one time, 3 days long it lasted. I remember being in the basement, sleeping in the bed, thinking what it would be like to be a divorced dad and how much I would hate that. Suzanne finally came to me at the peace talks and expressed to me so I could understand it how much I was hurting her with that anger. She got me to understand, so I went out that night and I willfully and forcefully got myself to lose that anger. I remember just blowing it out, picturing the putrid, pussy anger leaving me and breathing in clean, fresh air. I woke up the next morning feeling like a new person. I'd gotten rid of that anger, and I shared that with Suzanne, and I remember she came to me and put her head on my chest with tears in her eyes. And that's when I knew it was going to be okay. A few months later, Suzanne made a declaration out loud. She said, I'm going to start making new friends. I want to get out and make new friends, do things in their neighborhood. I'm going to try to be happy. And I thought, wow, that's a great idea. I think I'm going to try that too. I'm going to put a smile on my face, and I'm going to be happy. So sometime in that period, I remember walking down the stairs on a Sunday morning. I just walked downstairs and I heard Suzanne and Jacob just giggling in the living room, just clowning around. I walked down the stairs and I looked over at them, and then I looked back so hard I almost broke my neck, because magic re-entered our life that day, and Suzanne's 1,000-watt smile was back. I saw it for the first time in years. Her her eyes lit up, her dimples were back, and her whole face just shone in joy, and I knew that she had found her happiness. My next step on finding true joy in our family came, I think, later that summer. My brother Joe and his wife Donna visited us, and Joe was very tight with me, and Suzanne and Donna are very, very close. And Joe and I were sitting in our hot tub having a beer after a day of golf, and Joe challenged me. He says, John, when's it going to be your turn to catch a break in life? I mean, you know, you went through all this infertility, had all those problems getting the adoption started, then you went through this with Sammy. When's it going to be your turn to catch a break? And I didn't answer him right away. In fact, I engaged all my senses, and inside the house I could hear Suzanne and Donna giggling. I'm sure they were laughing at us about something we did that day. And I listened some more, and I heard, in another part of the house, I heard Zach singing, because he's always singing and dancing around. And at that moment, Jacob came bounding out of the basement door with a swimsuit on, a big smile on his face, wanting to get in the hot tub with Uncle Joe and Dad. And I had a feeling that I hadn't had in a while, and that feeling was, I was feeling blessed. And I was feeling blessed that everything that had been given to us in life, and that I was even feeling blessed that we had Sammy in our life, and blessed that all the things I learned from Sammy and the kids of T5A. And it was really that lesson of extravagant love that Sammy's ultimate mission to me. I spoke earlier how our marriage was never the same. Well, today I have to say our marriage and our love for each other, for Suzanne and I, is so much deeper and stronger than ever. We've been through a lot of crap in our marriage. We've been through a lot of joy. We know we'll go through whatever God puts in front of us, and I got to tell you, I like the joy better. But I miss Sammy. I miss him every day. I think of him every hour of every day. My heart has a big hole that will never heal, but somehow my heart has grown around it and expanded so that I can feel, share, give, and take extravagant love and to live a life with great joy again. Thank you very, very much for giving me the honor to speak to you tonight. I very much appreciate it. I do have some books available if anybody's interested. I, again, forgot my pictures. This was Suzanne that found her smile. Again, I just want to share this. And there's our son Zach, 17-year-old. And there's Suzanne and Jacob and Zach. And there's our family. So thank you all very much.